Hey everyone, welcome to another episode on RAM Media. My name is Morgan Lopez, and today I'm here to talk to you about what I believe, at least, is the correct attitude or perception that one should actually have about the Ten Commandments. One that I think, obviously, atheists have completely misunderstood, as to be expected. I mean, they don't exactly spend a lot of time studying the Bible, but in a more profound sense, I don't think I've ever seen, at least in my lifetime, I don't think I've ever seen Christians really view it properly, which might seem a little bit strange, but let's get into it coming up. Hey, alright, so the Ten Commandments, for those of you that are unaware, and this might actually come as a surprise to you, but there actually are people who have no idea in the Christian West who call themselves Christians who have no idea what the Ten Commandments are. I'm not joking, really. I'm full of stories, and some of you might think I'm full of something else too, but here we go. I once had an argument with a Christian, another Christian, and this was actually before I was a Christian, where I was talking about the Ten Commandments, and it's like this person had no idea what it was. And I'm like, it's in the Bible. And so I took the guy he was a Christian. I took him to Exodus 20 and I showed him there. And I'm not joking. His response was like, oh, wow, I didn't know that was there. So when you see that people in the world in general just have absolutely no idea what the correct view of the Ten Commandments is supposed to be, it's no wonder, right? No wonder people who are not Christians have the complete wrong idea of what it is all about. Because if even Christians are so ignorant about it, then I mean, the whole thing is just doomed from the get-go. Now, generally speaking, people seem to, when people view the Ten Commandments like thou shalt not this and thou shalt not that, right? And people are like, well, we're sick and tired of being, that's how, it's just, oh, well, thou shalt not. It seems like this oppressive, overly restrictive thing. And no wonder, because that is the attitude that a lot of Christians actually take, right? That what's called Bible bashing, would go around and beat people over the head with a book and say, oh, well, you adulterer and you this. And it's been made out by a lot of Christians to be this thing that you go and beat people over the head with. And so naturally, obviously, if you try to beat people over the head with something, they're obviously going to recoil from it. I mean, no wonder. That's actually one view. But then everything's got a polar opposite. Human beings, we pendulum swing in everything. So on the other side, you then have a lot of Christians who just want to get rid of the Ten Commandments altogether. It's like, no, that was for the Jews. It's like, okay. You might as well, why don't you just cut out the whole Old Testament and get rid of it, because that was for the Jews. It's such this idea of it was for the Jews is such a ridiculous idea. It's unbelievable. The Jews, the reason why God set up the Israelite nation was because they were meant to be a blessing to everyone else, which means, if you look at the Sabbath law, even the stranger that's within your gates is meant to keep the Sabbath. It's like, if it wasn't for everyone, then it's just completely ridiculous. And so you've got this pendulum swing. And the interesting thing is that a lot of the Christians that want to go and Bible bash the Ten Commandments on other on other people in the world, and even between each other, mind you. When it comes to the issue of the Sabbath, then they want a 10% discount. It's like, well, we'll have the other 9, but the Sabbath, no. And then they take the same attitude that the other Christians have, where they're like, oh, that was for the Jews. It's like, anyway. So those are generally the kinds of attitudes that people have, and that the perception that the world has is just Ten Commandments. The Bible is just this oppressive thing. It wants to get rid of all your fun. And it's only interested in telling us what we should or should not be doing. Fair enough. That's people's perception. And I believe that I lay the blame at the feet of Christians, right? Because obviously we're the ones that are supposed to represent the faith. So if people have the wrong idea of our faith, well, then it stands to reason that the spokespeople for the, you know, the face of Christianity, well, it is kind of our fault. So what's the correct view? Now, I heard another view by a preacher whom I actually respect immensely, like absolutely immensely, and I can understand within the context of his particular sermon why he said this, but he basically said, you know, when you look at the Ten Commandments, especially if you're a Christian, you rather than viewing it as a thou shalt not, you know, like a very, like, you can sort of imagine a German sergeant, sorry, you know, streng verboten kind of thing. It's like, don't do that, right? You shouldn't view it like that, as thou shalt not, you know, spoiler of fun and killer of all joy on the planet. And he's correct in that. You shouldn't view it in that way. But then he goes on to say you should rather view it as like, thou shalt not steal. Who, me? I would never dream of doing that, you know. Murder, me, never. It's unthinkable. I actually believe that is also incorrect. And the reason for that is because I believe that the person who believes that they would never do or commit a particular atrocity is exactly the kind of person who will end up doing so. Because if you believe that you're wonderful and innocent and that you would never do these things, you will never see that situation coming that will make you do that particular atrocity, whatever it is. You won't see it coming, and it will hit you like a ton of bricks. And history is full of people who have done things that they never thought they would have done. There was an experiment recently by a gentleman called Darren Brown, I believe his name is. This guy is he's really, really good, and he did this social experiment where he tried to find the most agreeable people within all of the applicants. And so you can find this on Netflix. And he whittled them down to 4 people, right? So that there was 2 men and 2 women. And what he did is he set up a fake charity sort of scenario where everyone involved they were all actors, and they got this, and they would bring this individual in that they had specially selected under, you know, false pretenses. They thought that they were there to have a meeting with all that sort of thing. And his aim was to see whether through manipulation he could get this person who has no criminal record, is a regular Joe, just like me and you, if he would be able to get this individual, right, to at the end of the experiment, if he could get them to actually murder someone, right? This was the social experiment, and he succeeded 75% of the time. Right, 3 of the 4 people actually went on to murder the individual that was involved in this whole thing. I really recommend you go watch it. And none of these people walking into that situation that day would have ever in their entire lives, the fact that they would murder someone else would be unthinkable. So that takes us back now to the 10 Commandments, right? In 10 Commandments, it's correct that it's not this thou shalt not, killer of joy and fun and all that kind of stuff. We need to understand that the law doesn't just come out of nowhere, right? Thou shalt not kill, right? It would be a stupid law if people were not prone to kill in the first place. It's like, well, what are you talking about, right? It's like you buy your child. Your child comes to you and asks for a puppy. This is a story I also heard. It gives a good illustration. Your child comes to you and asks you for a puppy. And you go and all right, okay, you're going to look after it and so on. It's okay, cool. You go get the puppy, give this child the puppy, and everything's great. He's all very, very happy. Then one day you come home and you find that this child has gone and butchered the puppy. You know, his guts lying all over the place, sacrificed on an altar, you know. And you're like, oh my goodness, you know, I mean, you completely freak out, send this child for therapy. And you know, this would be, you know, catastrophe of the century for you as a parent, right? But let's say you take the child for therapy and he gets better and so on and so forth, and everything gets sorted out. A few years later, a child comes back to you again and says to you, listen, Dad, Mom, can I have a puppy? What are you going to do? Well, thou shalt not dismember the puppy. Thou shalt not beat its brains to bits, and you would be justified in doing that. Thou shalt not sprinkle its blood on the walls, graffiti, whatever, with this animal. Suddenly it's a legitimate thing. But imagine if you had started out that way, right the very first time that the child came up to you and said, Dad, Mom, can I have a puppy? And right off the bat, you said to the child, well, thou shalt not dismember that. The child would look at you and be like, you've lost your mind. I mean, what are you talking about? I'm going to go kill the puppy, right? So the law is these laws come about because there is a state of things that it's talking about a state of human being, and that's what the Bible actually is. It's a book that tries to teach us about not only obviously about our relationship with God and all that sort of thing. That's obvious. But it's also a treatise on what human beings are like after the fall, what we are like and how we treat each other. So when you read something like the Ten Commandments, and you want to sit there and this is the flaw that I actually find in a lot of Christians, where they I mean, and even as an atheist, and it's something that when I was an atheist, something that I can still see. It's where you get these holier than thou people who behave like they never do anything wrong, and they becoming a Christian doesn't magically turn you into a saint, at all. It's a lifelong process of becoming a better person. If you think you've arrived, forget it. You're delusional, right? You've never arrived. You've never become perfect. It's just it doesn't happen. It's a lifelong journey, right? But you get Christians like, well, now I'm baptized, now I'm a Christian, now I'm wonderful and my sins are forgiven. Yes, your sins get forgiven, but it doesn't mean you're perfect. Chances are you're still as stupid and prone to sin as you've ever been, because you're still human. So, and if you read the Bible, there's absolutely no evidence whatsoever in the Bible that licenses you to read the Ten Commandments and be like, I would never do that. There's absolutely nothing in all of scriptures that allows you to have the audacity to read the Ten Commandments and be like, oh, this is something I would never do. Rubbish. Absolute rubbish. So the correct attitude when you're reading the Ten Commandments, the correct attitude is to read that and be like, you know what, I need to be afraid of my darker nature. I need to admit my darker nature, that I could be that person. I could be that thief. I could be that adulterer. I could be that murderer. Given the right circumstances, there's almost 100% guaranteed that you would be that person, right? And we see it throughout the scriptures. Israel, just read the book of Judges, for heaven's sake. The Jews, just this ebb and flow from one disaster to the next, all the time thinking that they're absolutely wonderful and God's chosen people, right? But the Bible itself confesses that they became just as reprehensible, if not more so, than their surrounding pagan people. I mean, it ended up having that there was child sacrifices and temple prostitution right in Israel, right? And they ended up just being just exactly like everyone else, and that's because if people get, when they become Christians and things of that sort, they it's like they inherit this blindness to the fact that they're still sinful, right? And so you get, and that's why one of the reasons why people get irritated with Christians so much, especially where you have these guys, they go out picketing, and there's this signboard about all the different categories of people that are going to go to hell. It's like, what are you doing, right? Really, what kind of example are you honestly setting, right? I mean, you read nowhere where if Jesus is the pattern man for Christians, right? It's like he's the one. If you're a Christian, you have no business having any role model other than Jesus Christ. End of story. All right, that's just the end of the discussion, right? No politician, no football player, no whatever, because all these people are just as wretched, if not more, than the average person on the planet. Constantly involved in scandals and stuff like that. I mean, I had this argument with this one woman that we need Hillary Clinton in the White House because to have a female example for young women. It's like, really, seriously, do you not know what she did to what the Clintons did to the Haitians, the disaster and the suffering that those people suffered because of the meddling of the Clintons and stuff like that? It's like, really? So for the sake of feminism, and never mind that you're a Christian and you should know better rather than be a complete buffoon about this. If you're teaching your daughter that she should look up to Hillary Clinton as a piece of feminine role model, then it explains why Christianity is in the state that it is today. To be honest, really, to be honest, coming from the mouth of a Christian, it's just like, and that kind of thing is precisely is the type of attitude that you can expect from people that watch more television and news than they do reading the Bible, or not just reading the Bible, right? Because reading the Bible is not enough. You've got to actually study it, right? Study the Bible, not just read it, right? Atheists read the Bible, right? And what's their understanding of it like? Well, it's rubbish for the most part, okay? So when you go into the Ten Commandments, thou shalt not do this, thou shalt not do that. It's like, it's there because the chances are, given the right set of circumstances, you absolutely would do it, without question. Without question. And if you don't believe that, then you are exactly the kind of person that would do that, because you blind yourself to the possibility that you could do any of these things, and the situation then will come right along and it will take you out, and you are going to end up doing one of those things. And there's endless psychological studies and things like that. Or people do these things. That's exactly this. It's this almost like aspect blindness. Oh, that's unthinkable. It's like nothing should be unthinkable, right? You should know that this kind of thing is precisely the sort of thing that human beings do all the time, right? And there's nothing special about you that makes you immune to committing atrocities. No, right? It's absolutely, there's just no way. You're deluding yourself. So as a Christian, you have absolutely no business reading the Ten Commandments and being like, yeah, I would never do that. Rubbish. They're not there because people would never do it, or you magically are immune to sin now because you're a Christian. And you get evidence of this from even in the past, for example. I mean, if you think about people who never thought that they would become a certain thing. For example, and I'm sorry to use the example of Hitler because it's so overused by the current political left. It's like if you disagree with them, you're automatically magically Hitler kind of thing. So I apologize, but I use it because Hitler had a 90% approval rating. Think about that for a second, right? 90% approval rating in Germany. And then he went off to do, a lot of those people had never ever dreamed that that's what they were getting themselves into. And it's the same thing with communist Russia, right? Communism has killed to date 100 million plus people. 100 million plus people. Communism has annihilated and counting. Because communism still exists in the world. Go look at Venezuela with all the socialism that's going on there. People dying of starvation and the violence and all that kind of stuff. Look at South Africa. As communist rubbish going on there all over the place, and counting the death toll. And people who never ever thought that they would be murderous and ridiculous, they're doing it. And with human beings, it's the norm, not the exception. Human stupidity is the norm. It's not the exception. Human violence and wretchedness is the norm. It's not the exception. And you're absolutely delusional if you think that humans are essentially good. It's utterly delusional. There's not a single piece of evidence in all of history that demonstrates such a fact, that human beings are essentially good. It's an utter delusion. It's postmodern. It's postmodern, new age delusion that human beings are essentially good. I mean, for the first indicator of this fact is, if human beings were essentially good, then why would you ever have to discipline children? Why would parenting then be so important if they just automatically just became good? That's not what our default position is. That's not our default button. Is not good, altruistic, caring for everyone, and then along the way we become corrupted. It's not. It's not the case. I used to be an au pair, and I au paired for this family, very, very wealthy family, extremely wealthy family. Mom, highly successful businesswoman. Father, highly successful businessman. I mean, lived in the richest areas, and so on and so forth. And I was in charge. I had 3 kids in my charge, and it became evident to me that these kids were completely and utterly devoid of proper parental care. That for as long as these kids had been alive, other people have looked after them rather than their parents. That the parents had been an absolute minimal effect, minimal presence in their life. And the kinds of behaviors that I saw the kinds of things that I saw these kids do, the kinds of things I heard them say, the way I saw them treat other children on the playground and things like that, it's the kind of, it's maliciousness that I haven't even seen in many adults. And that's what human beings become when you just leave them to their own devices. When we're left to our own devices to just do whatever we want, if there is no instruction, if there is no discipline, if there's no care, if there's no supervision, if there's no mentoring, the default position is to behave like animals in the animal kingdom, where it's red in tooth and claw. It's all about me and forget everyone else. If I can steal this food and survive, that's fine. If the other creature dies as a result, who cares? As long as I continue to survive in order to spread my DNA. And that's exactly what you have, isn't it, these days, right? Just think about the teenage pregnancy thing. It's like we've become very much like animals. It's like, in an immoral society, how do men behave? It's like spray and pray, right? A woman will have 5 kids, each one from a different father. We've become, and that's exactly what we've become like. And then it's a mystery to us. It's a mystery to us then why society is decaying and it's in the state of affairs that it is. Why so many young men are ending up in prison. Because we go and we read there, like, don't commit adultery. Oh, please. Adultery today is probably one of the greatest. Adultery today is probably, arguably, one of the single greatest causes of criminality and poverty in the world at the moment, is adultery. Not to mention disease. Because STDs, sexually transmitted disease, these are diseases of immorality, obviously, with the exception of those who get infected by rape and all of that sort of thing, obviously, all right? I mean, the fact that I even have to make that distinction is completely ridiculous. Obviously, I'm not talking about those people, but that's a distinct minority. It's like 1, maximum 2% of the cases. These diseases are spread because of immorality. It's that simple. There are many cases, there are many indicators of immorality in a society. The law against adultery is not there just to spoil your fun. It's there to protect you from abject misery. And if you pull up these restrictions, the human default position is we're going to destroy marriage, we're going to hurt each other, we're going to abandon our responsibilities as parents, we're going to abandon our responsibilities as wives, as husbands, and we're going to do all of this at the expense of the children, who are the inevitable result of it. And that's what you get. People thought that we could do without the Ten Commandments. You can't do it. You can look around. One of the most fascinating vindications of the veracity of the Ten Commandments that I find is that these days I'm seeing, now that the new atheism, which was basically, how can you describe new atheism? New atheism has basically died down now, and you're starting to get a rise of a much higher quality of atheist, which is, as far as I'm concerned, is a wonderful thing. You're getting a much higher quality of atheism these days. Atheists who are a lot more philosophical, a lot more philosophically robust, and conscientious, and self-critical, and all of these sorts of things. And even they, and I watch them, I listen to their videos, and even they are saying that we need to return to these old-time values. They just continue to deny the God that made it so. So that's the correct view to have of the Ten Commandments, or in general. It's not thou shalt not, restriction of freedom and restriction of fun, or oh no, but I would never do that. Oh, because I'm wonderful, I'm harmless. No, you're not. No, you aren't. There's no one is harmless, and this is something that we need to get into our heads. No one is harmless no one in the world is harmless. Even the most agreeable, cowering person has done something to hurt someone else, even if unintentionally. Because there's something we need to understand about human beings, is that the amount of horror you can afflict is directly proportional to how much good you can do. Right? Because as human beings, we almost have this self-worshipping. I blame humanism. We almost have this self-worshipping thing that, oh, we're essentially good and we're so wonderful, and philosophy and so on and so forth, as and so there's this very strange self-worshipping thing that we have. But we don't realize it's like from like Spider-Man, right? With great power comes great responsibility. Well, no, duh. You're right, okay. And it's like, what creature on the planet has the greatest power of all the creatures on the planet? Human beings, right? So you cannot have that. You cannot have a massive potential for good without at the same time also having a massive potential for evil. It's simply impossible. Right, and it's self-evident. If you think about, even if we just take animals, right? How useful, for example, how much good can a rabbit do, right? Or a guinea pig? How much good can a guinea pig do? Well, I mean, not much. They're cute and whatever, not much. But then also, how much bad can a guinea pig or a rabbit or a cow? You don't exactly. If you see a rabbit in a dark alley somewhere, or a guinea pig, in a dark alley somewhere, you don't run in the opposite direction screaming. Why? Because there's not a lot it can do to you, right? But now think about a dog. How useful are dogs? A man's best friend, right? Really, really intelligent. Amazing, amazing creatures, right? And the dog's capacity for harm is directly proportional to its capacity for good. Because if you get a dog that's stray and that's been abused and that's become rabid, or whatever the case might be, I mean, if you've ever seen someone that's been mauled by a dog, it's unbelievable. It's unbelievable what these creatures can do. It's something that they should be respected for. You know, we should respect the fact that animals, if not raised or treated properly, they become like that, right? Because I mean, in general, I mean that's what they're like in the wild. If you've ever seen, and I've seen it, if you've seen a pack of hyenas or wild dogs take down an animal, I mean they rip it to pieces. You know, the thing's still alive. It's unbelievably brutal, because that's what the natural world is like. That's what nature is. That's our default. And so as you scale it up in terms of the potential for good, you also scale up the potential for evil. So for us to sit and have this self-worshipping attitude, oh, we're so wonderful, and the humans are wonderful. Yeah, it's great, and we should celebrate all the good things that we are good for, and all of the things that, all of the accomplishments that human beings do. But we lose sight of our dark side, and we ignore our potential for stupidity and wickedness at our own peril. And that's what things like the Ten Commandments, actually the more correct way. Ten Commandments is actually not 100% appropriate as far as I'm concerned. 10 principles, because there's a lot that goes under adultery, and a lot that goes under murder. For example, Jesus Christ, he says, if you so much as look at your brother with hatred, you've violated the commandment of murder. Well, why? Well, you don't kill someone you don't hate, right? Christ is talking, let's take these things to a higher level, right? Because that's what the commandments are talking about. It's talking about a higher principle, right? Thou shalt not murder. Okay. But what leads to that? What leads a person to eventually get to the point where they will take another person's life? Right? It is that natural progression. It starts off with finding a reason for resentment. I resent this person. I dislike this person. I hate this person. I really hate this person. And then boom, you need that much of a reason to eventually go and murder them in the most atrocious way possible, the most hideous way possible. And that's what takes a perfectly normal, possibly decent person to go off and do something like you saw in Auschwitz or in the gulags of Russia, where people, the kinds of things that they did. I mean, you need, if you don't need to sleep for about 5 weeks, go and read what people did to each other, and go and read what people are doing to each other even in South Africa at the moment. And it's where I spent most of my life. 20 plus years I lived in South Africa. What a wonderful place South Africa is. It was with great trepidation and lament that I left that country, but I did so by necessity. And what people are doing to each other there, black and white, black against white, white against black, black against black, white against white. Forget about the damn race, for heaven's sake. It's human, what human beings are doing to each other. Human beings. Forget about tribe or race. Stop with that stupidity, for heaven's sake. For once and for all, stop it. What human beings are doing to each other. Because there's nothing but rhetoric that goes around that gives people reason to hate the person next to them, because they're different, even in the tiniest way. And you hear, oh, but race this and race that. What abject? Race is not the only difference between human beings. I remember being in school where girls were beating up another girl because she had blue eyes but was a brunette. Literally, one group of girls went to this other girl. She was a brunette, but she had blue eyes. And their excuse was, it doesn't make sense. White girls, right? They were all white. They went beat the hell out of her, because how dare she have blue eyes but be a brunette? This is among people of the same race. And I saw the same thing amongst blacks, where they would pick on a girl. There was a girl who was really, really dark, but really, really dark, like the kind of dark that you get in like Central Africa. And the black kids gave her absolute hell because she was so dark. All of the racist jokes that white people tell about black people, about how if you switch off the lights you can only see their teeth, they would make the same. The black kids would make the same jokes about this black girl. So it has nothing to do with race. Human beings will jump on any difference between each other. Any difference, no matter how small. We will jump on any difference between each other in order to find a reason to abuse the person next to us. It's because there is a moral rot in the human soul, and it has nothing to do with race, it has nothing to do with gender. It has to do with the human being. There's a moral rot in there that if not, it needs next to nothing to find a motivation to go out and be completely stupid. And this is what the Ten Commandments represent. It's a warning. It's not even a condemnation. It's a warning. It's like, don't do these things. Recognize this potential in you and do absolutely everything humanly possible to not be that. Because if you do, it's going to be hell on earth. And we have mountains upon mountains of historical evidence and bodies piled up in history of people that refuse to see this. And you see the spirit in everyone. It's always the other person that's evil. It's always the other person that's this. And oh me, I'm so wonderful. And you see this in the church, which is why I'm making these videos, right? One of my biggest motivations to make these videos is not only to try and offer up a better or more correct understanding of the Christian faith to people who are not Christians, but to people who are. We're just as bad. We're just as pathetic and stupid. Even though we have the Bible and it tells us all of these things, and we don't even understand what's in there anymore. So that's my meditation on the Ten Commandments, how it should be viewed. It's a warning. The Ten Commandments should be viewed, and when you read it with solemnity, for heaven's sake. For not just for heaven's sake, for your own sake, for the sake of your children, for the sake of your family, for the sake of your friends. Read it with solemnity. It's a warning. That if you're not careful, this is what you're going to do. And that's where the principle you go and look in the scripture. Just Google the phrase. If your eye causes you to sin, pull it out. If your arm causes you to sin, cut it off. Now, it's not saying literally go and now amputate yourself. I mean, it's not. It's trying to express the gravity of the situation, because that just avoid these things and anything that would lead up to it, like the plague. Avoid it like the plague. Because you're better off restricting or yourself in such a manner than and living in like a state of amputation for example. It's better to be that than for you to go out and spread an ideology that results in the murder and the torture of thousands. Because that's where it goes every time. That's where it goes. And we're seeing these ideologies even in the world right now, today, Communism and socialism and things of that sort are alive and well, even in the world today. Right now, people, it is currently, socialism is currently fashionable. An ideology which has single-handedly killed 100 million or more people, 100 to 150 million people and counting. You get rid of it at your own peril. And that's exactly it. Get rid of it at your own peril. So that's my 2 cents, ladies and gentlemen. I thank you for your time. And I hope you really meditate on these things. Next time you read, I really hope that the next time you read the 10 Commandments, that it's got a different kind of meaning to you. Be careful. You ignore these things, and you ignore these things at your own peril and the peril of those you love. Because by ignoring them, you don't only endanger the lives of the people you dislike, you endanger the lives of the people you love too. There's no escaping the consequences of getting rid of morality just because at the moment it's convenient, because it allows you to get back at someone you dislike or someone who's wronged you. It's not worth it. All you do is perpetuate the cycle of violence and stupidity. And there you have it. Ladies and gentlemen, I thank you for your time. God bless. Cheerio.